I just want to say welcome to you all, both the people in the room and the people that are online. Our session today is on communities in action. And as you'll all know, in your own communities, the amount of work that is being done on the ground, both in villages and towns and townlands, and in collaboration together like the community wetlands and the Farmers for Nature. So we are very aware of what's happening. So what we're going to discuss today is what are the great examples out there, what's happening, and what else can we be doing. But also, having a discussion with the speakers, we decided that we had 20-minute presentations. We're going to try and cut them a bit short, and we have about, at present, half an hour for discussion, because we'd really like to hear from you. What do you think? What's happening in our communities? What's really good? And I believe we have a rapporteur here, Sarah Zimmerman, who's going to take notes. So we'd like you to feedback on your communities, on what you're doing, and what your organisations are doing. So hopefully we can start a conversation, more so than just presentations. I hope that's suitable. So I'd like to introduce you to our speakers. So Faith Wilson and Fiona McGowan are both ecologists, eminent ecologists, and they are consultants to the Community Foundation for Ireland. We have Chris Eyes, who's from the Community Wetlands Forum. And I said, Chris, well, how will I introduce you? And he said, I'm a volunteer, working for a volunteer community. So that's our Chris. And then we have Brigid Barry, who is from Farmers for Nature. And you'll know Brigid because she was with Bjorn Bio for a long time and a real activist around biodiversity. So without further ado, we're going to go through the speakers, and then we're going to, so if you've got statements that you'd like to make, or you've questions, or you have anything on your mind that you'd like people to hear, now's your chance. So at the end of our speakers, we will take questions and statements. Is that okay with everybody? Yep, great. And people online as well. We will have the Q&A in your chat function that you got in your magic link on Tuesday. So once you have that open, you can send questions as well. And we will take your questions as well as the audience. Thanks so much.
So, good morning, everybody. We're having, Faith and myself are having a joint effort this morning. It's really good to be here in person and to see you all. And great to know there's a few more online, hopefully, listening in too. So we have a story to tell you this morning. We are ecologists who have been working on lots of different habitat species surveys, that kind of thing, down through the past couple of decades. But in recent years, increasingly, we have been called upon by local communities all over the country who are looking to learn more about their local biodiversity and learn how to protect it and how to mind it. So we have a question to get you started, to wake you up this morning. We're just wondering how many of you are aware of biodiversity action plans in your own local area? Great, that's a good show.
And how many of you are actually doing anything on the ground in your community? Excellent. So we'd be really interested in feedback on what supports you think, government and the agencies need to offer communities to help those things progress and develop. So it was an outcome from the last National Biodiversity Conference that the Community Foundation Ireland Environment and Nature Fund came about, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's one of the seeds for nature,
yeah. And that fund was issued in 2019. Little did anybody know that the pandemic was only around the corner. And the whole way of engaging with communities, we had to be fairly agile and, to use that horrible word, pivot. So we're going to share some of those experiences of how that actually worked. But I think through quite a challenging time, there has been some great results coming out of this. So we have developed, with a whole host of other ecologists who are on the panel, 56 action plans for communities all over Ireland, which is just wonderful.
So to yeah. Thanks. Well, just some of the highlights that we wanted to show you. We've thrown in a few pictures of communities in action there, working with their ecologists. So, like, a great thing about it was that local communities got to develop a relationship with their own ecologist. All of us are on a panel which the CFI organised back in 2019. And so, you know, it started off in many cases with raising awareness, with education about what is in their locality. But the really important thing was that the plan belongs to the local communities, that it's their action plan that they can work with in the coming years. It's not going to be something that's going to be put up on a shelf. So we wanted to arm them with what they needed. So as well as, you know, letting them know about the various habitats and species of interest in their locality, we also provided them with resource lists so that they can get an idea of where to go for further funding, who to go to, both the professional agencies, conservation NGOs. You know, there's so many great groups out there and plenty of help, but communities don't always know where to go. And this is an action actually we'll be talking about later on as to a solution to this. But there's a very diverse range of actions has resulted. And so just to focus on a few of the highlights, here's one.
Yeah, I suppose one of the things that came about was that it very quickly became clear that this was more than a plan. You know, this was the process of engaging with people. There were newsletters created by ecologists to liaise with people. There was online Zoom sessions.
Yeah, and then so what we've done is we've pulled out a few of kind of what we thought were really interesting bits from the different plans by different ecologists. In this one here, Dr. Deborah Darcy in the plan for Killiniran came up with a scheme which she called Hedgerow Heroes, and it just really good comprehensive advice on cherishing the hedgerows that they have, and then looking into how to manage them over the coming years. Most of the plans are 5-year plans.
And a lot of the groups that were successful in their funding applications were tidy towns groups. And it's not a group that I've had much experience with. Fiona has. And there's, 900?
There's over 900 tidy towns groups in Ireland. I don't know if you're aware of that. And biodiversity and sustainability are the biggest parts, really, at this stage of the competition. The tidy part goes back to 60 years ago when the competition was founded, and it's been around for so long we can't really change the name, but really it's about looking after your local environment, and these groups are crying out for help when it comes to biodiversity, and this is where groups like the CFI and local authority BAP funding, this is fantastic because it's giving groups the right advice. Their hearts are in the right place, they want to do the right thing, but it's giving them the right advice, as you can see here. For
example, here is a great guidance from the Inishowen Rivers Trust, the Carndonagh community, on weeding. And, you know, there was initially an obsession with tidy towns groups about weeding, and everything was a weed until they were introduced to the fact that it was a wildflower, and maybe this was actually the food plant of a particular butterfly that they were merrily planting pollinator-friendly planting for in their bedding schemes, but didn't get that the butterfly actually needs the food plant for its caterpillars to complete its life cycle.
And then there was plenty of other aspects, as we were mentioning, the pivoting. So some of that we brought in where, you know, it wasn't just a plan, there was also training going on. And with the pandemic, a lot of this training went online. But I think it actually turned out quite well.
Yeah, and the other great resource from doing that training online was that the training could be recorded, so that if people weren't able to attend, the recording could be made available and more people could actually see it and it could be shared. So the kind of ripple effect of who you were managing to engage with and speak to grew, which was great. And like as scientists, we're very good at collecting data and, you know, can be a bit obscure about how it's presented. So just within the plans, there was really good examples of helpful ways to present scientific data that people got it, you know. So here was just a simple example of, you know, a nice chart showing different hedgerow species in a hedgerow that Dr. Karina Dingerkus did.
And we had a couple of different types of habitat maps. With this one, which Beck created for the Navan BAP, you can see that they've highlighted the different types of habitats in the Greater Navan area, and then they've also kind of they've got their little arrows zooming in to particular places that are mentioned throughout the BAP. And then this plan, which I did for my own local community in Abbeyleix, we looked at the different habitats, but then we also highlighted the biodiversity highlights of the area. So this map is actually up on the wall of our local bakery on just off the main street, because it's great for visitors or for locals alike to see what's actually in their local area.
And even just understanding the diversity of habitats, people wouldn't necessarily think of a stone wall being a habitat until you go for a walk with them and you point out, for example, the native ferns that are growing in the lime mortar on that wall. And you see, well, where else do we see these ferns in your village? This is a habitat.
Also several, obviously most of the communities, certainly in the towns and in a lot of the villages, you're dealing with very, their central parts would be very urbanised, and you know, how do you bring biodiversity into that area? And this is an example from Abbeyleix, where we have a wonderful local artist who painted these beautiful murals on, you know, the ugly service boxes on the main street and the bins. And it was that, as you all know, as Chris will tell you maybe later on, we have a beautiful bog, Abbeyleix bog, at the edge of our town. And it was kind of trying to link in the bog with the town itself. So it was a way of bringing biodiversity onto the main street.
And pointing people in the direction of resources, because again, as ecologists, we're used to digging into different kind of things online and how to find out where things are. And we forget that people don't have that. So pointing people to the direction, for example, of the Old Ordnance Survey Ireland mapping, looking at field systems in the area, looking at what hedgerows are still extant, was there a little wetland there that had been drained, and then pointing that out to the community, like actually this hedgerow has been here in this very place since the first edition maps of 1860. How fantastic a resource is that?
And then getting back to the point of where, you know, we want these BAPs to be very much owned by the local communities. You know, feedback was taken from the communities, as this example here, you know, have you ever heard of biodiversity? Is the natural environment and nature of your local area in Ballintubber important to you? So those kind of, that kind of information was gathered as well.
It was interesting arriving yesterday morning. I met a colleague who'd come in through a gate coming into the castle, and they were talking to one of the security guys, and he said, "Oh, what's going on today?" And she said, "Oh, it's the biodiversity conference." And he was like, "Well, what's biodiversity?" Do you know, maybe nature, you know, just engaging that making things friendlier, making things accessible to people is really important. And you did fantastic work, Fiona, through social media.
Yeah, well, this was just something that kind of, I don't know, it just developed slowly, but as part of our local BAP, we have been doing a series of very short 1-2 minute videos which have gone up on our local Facebook page, just to further awareness about the habitats, the plants, things of interest in the local area. And it's been great. I've been getting lovely feedback. I'll be stopped on the main street and say, you know, I love that one that you did about the bluebells or the primroses. But also they're getting feedback from emigrants from the town who are living far away, but they're still engaging with their locality, with their home place, and having a look at these. So, you know, it's all about furthering awareness.
And what's great as well, people can give out about social media, but a lot of the tidy towns use social media as a platform to say we're doing our whatever session on Thursday night at 8 o'clock, meet at such and such. But there's a lovely opportunity there to sort of spread the word on biodiversity actions. And, you know, a lot of the tidy towns groups follow other tidy towns groups, or we could encourage them to post something that they were doing in their community. So, for example, everybody was looking enviously at Ennis Tidy Towns and what they were doing with, managing the grasslands on their roundabouts and how things were going there, and going, God, could we do that in our community? So it can be a really good driver for action and inspiration. And even if somebody says, oh, we heard our first cuckoo, somebody goes, did we hear our cuckoo yet? It's brilliant.
And then we've also been engaging with the National Biodiversity Data Centre. So there's lots of chances for partnerships and collaboration. But this is great, and there's more news to come on this later today as well.
Yeah, so there's a dedicated portal was set up for all the data from the Community Foundation Ireland funded projects. And any ecologists out there who haven't uploaded all their data, I'll give you a nudge, because it's actually great when you see your data mapped, and when a community can see that resource and say, that's our data, those are our species, that's our action plan. They're the things we recorded and that we know about in our community. And it's all there online, and it's an amazing resource, huge amount of records, over 8,000 records, over 1,000 species recorded. And some of the plans, we had the privilege of reviewing them as part of preparation for this talk, and so inspiring to see what other ecologists did, and they pulled in invertebrate specialists and got groups in Skerries excited about a bee corridor, and just fantastic stuff going on out there. And it's so easy to be overwhelmed by the kind of challenge of biodiversity loss and what's happening, and the ever relentless development that's going on in every town and village in Ireland at the moment. It seems nearly everywhere is a building site. But there's amazing stuff out there, and to kind of keep nurturing that is really important. And one of the things that we were thinking about is how to map the actions in the plan, and we thought that the setup that the pollinator plan has developed, where you can map your action for pollinators, if that could be expanded to where the biodiversity actions get mapped, so everybody can see, oh, this is where we're doing X for, it could be our bird nesting area. So instead of going, that's a whole load of grotty old looking brambles, everybody goes, no, that's where our wrens and dunnocks nest, and it starts to become real. And I think this would be a great way of putting that information out there and making sure that everybody knows, or can know if they're interested, where things are going.
Yeah, so we have a series of questions which I know we're going to deal with kind of at the very end of this session. But lastly, we just wanted to show you this group of pictures, and it's really just to give you an idea of some of the problems that communities are facing, and that we really need to think about how can we support them. So, as you know, the whole thing of phenomenon of wildflower meadows is cropping up all over the country, and they featured in most of the BAPs, and it's all about managing the grasslands just that bit differently, letting things grow, which we've done in my local town in Abbeyleix, and we've got some beautiful meadows, as you can see there in the front of that's our local Church of Ireland, and they've been great about letting the grass go. But of course the problems come then as to what do you do with the grass at the end of the season, and this has proved quite difficult. We had a local farmer there, as you can see in the top left, who came in and cut it for us, and this is our local wonderful rector's wife who spent a morning out making haycocks. She was remembering childhood memories, but it's not fair to be looking for that every year. But on the right there, we have a colleague of mine in Portlaoise, Brian Gaynor, has been doing an awful lot of work with local communities as well. And he works with the Laois Offaly IWT branch, and they have bought a power scythe, as you can see. It's a little two-wheel tractor. And that has been great for cutting. They're expensive pieces of kit, and it's a case of maybe looking for funding with them, but should it be community groups that are doing this? They're all volunteers, many of them are elderly. This is a question, it's really coming to the fore now as to, how do we move forward? So there are things to think about. And that's it. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you.
Good morning. Chris Ace is my name. mind my accent, is from the deep south, Kerry. Very deep, very, very deep south. I'm from Namibia originally. I landed in Abbeyleix about 22 years ago due to an Irish woman that has a lot to answer for. But I'm still here. Right. Okay, there you go. I'm going to talk, my hat today is Community Wetlands Forum, not Abbeyleix Bog Project, which I'm involved with. So I'm coming from the layer where we actually bring in community groups that is already involved in community activities or biodiversity or whatever in the peatlands, wetlands, and we created a forum for them. About now, next year will be around 10 years ago when we had our first meeting. But the whole idea is that communities work in isolation, and it is usually through networks and through other connections, either through these type of systems that the two of them were discussing about, the funding and having social media, or through the Tidy Towns network. That's where people talk to each other. The Community Wetlands Forum started off as an idea years ago for communities from the bottom up. I think that photograph summarizes, and that is about communities in action, about nature. So I'm going to just run through the Community Wetlands Forum, quickly give you a background, see what we're all about, and maybe answer a couple of questions. Right, community, just to clarify a couple of things why we decided on that name. It's not a community only, local communities, but also a community of interest. And it is interesting for me to see the hands going up here, how many of you are actually involved in your local community. Because it doesn't matter where you work, what you do, who you are, you're part of a community, whether it's a community, local community, or a community of interest. And the fact that we are sitting here today, we are a community of interest as well. I think we all have a common purpose and a common interest. And I think you need to look at it from that perspective. I think sometimes we get fixed on communities as just people in a town and a village. The second part of wetlands is, from our perspective, we use the Ramsar Convention Secretariat definition for wetlands. Forum is the key here, and it is a place where we can talk and have conversations with each other and be open and frank and honest and help each other. That is what the whole idea was for that. Just a quick timeline. I'm not going to read through all of this stuff. Community Wetlands Forum has started off with 5 or 6 groups. We've now basically grown over the years. We've managed to put in strategic plan. We've actually went along and had our first temporary community wetlands development officer from 2018. We've actually just appointed now a full-time development officer through funding that came from the government. We also have other people, and I will go through that. But there's an evidence-based, there's an organic development of this whole forum. I'm not going to read the detail there. I will talk more about it as we go. Just maybe key actions, and through the key actions, you will sort of get them just where I'm going to go with this in terms of what we already do to support biodiversity action. If you just look at the stuff, we obviously grow our membership. We develop partnerships with other people working together, community engagement with wetlands, awareness raising, building, capacity building and funding, ecosystem services research, conservation, biodiversity projects, education and interpretation, site management, recreation, and amenity. How do we do it? We've just recently got a 3-year funded under the Just Transition over 3 years to actually build capacity in communities and community groups that is already there. So we work with our member groups, and we want to bring more members in the 7 counties in the Midlands. This is a pilot project for Just Transition that will be rolled out. The next one will be rolled out nationally. And the whole idea is that we've developed initially a guidelines for communities, which is being revisited all the time through this project. And this guidelines has just been, the 2nd edition has just been published a month or 2 ago. There's a link on that you can actually download it. It's actually very interesting practical knowledge. The whole idea of Just Transition is capacity building in communities. And it is based on a research that we've done and money that we got to actually develop a framework of what is the stuff that we need as communities to be educated, to be trained, to capacity building, and where do we need, what are the needs for that. That is what we based it on. So also through the project is a whole process of jargon busting to what is biodiversity, what is wetlands, what is ecosystems, because it's about the language we use to make it as simple as possible. But through the communities and the community wetlands, we're not only talking about ecology and the ecological and the nature, but we also bring in the visual arts, we also bring in culture, all of that. That book is being launched this evening, Tina Claffey's second book, In Bird, this evening. Fantastic piece of work. That's a Tidy Towns group called Cultivan, who was just launched about a week ago, Gulliver's statue, and as part of their walks around the peatlands and stuff. Just to give you a flavor of the stuff that our community groups do, Sphagnum Transfer, Clon-Crowbog, as part of an association with the Care Peat Interact project, where that community group is involved there. You also have visitors to different sites by communities. In that case, I think it was the Green Party that visited Clock Jordan development, Skohaboy Bog about 2 weeks ago. Clock Jordan has just had a stone unveiled at the embassy of Jordan, because Clock Jordan means the stone of Jordan. And that is the connection with Jordan, the country. There's a whole history. So that is the connections, culture, the visual arts. We use all the stuff that is important to communities. Last year, the Community Wetlands Forum, we've joined Eurosite, which is a practitioners network for Europe, and we've offered to host their climate buffer study tour, the third one in Ireland, and that was last year in September. It was over 3 days, visited 4 sites, and then had a conclusion workshop. That report, final report, is available. It's for interesting reading. There's very interesting perspectives about community and community engagement and partnerships with other people. The Community Wetlands Forum also is a partner in the Farm Peat, results-based EIP, where we actually work with the whole idea is to get farmers to work on peatlands and stuff. And then also, we also involved as a knowledge site or a knowledge for waterlands, especially on engaging community and aligning governance. And that is how we can play our role from a community perspective. So currently, there's more actually. In green is the fixed members. The yellow on the map is in the last 2 years with Just Transition Project, we brought in new community groups. We have now actually, that map is already outdated. We have now about 45 groups involved. Associated stakeholders, we have a full-time community engagement officer on that Just Transition Project. Full-time development officer is just new one has just been appointed. Part-time waterlands liaison person that works with the Waterlands project. What are the key actions required? You want me to go through that now?
You have 3 more minutes.
Okay, I'm just going to quickly run through that just to give you an idea. If you look at the old main actions that we had in the previous NBAP, mainstreaming biodiversity, we would just like to see that it is more for the common good, that is integrated into socio-economic factors like sustainable development goals. We need more trained staff within the local authorities, like the biodiversity officers. We also want social justice, then strengthening the knowledge base for conservation, management, and so on, citizen science through ENGOs. And here's a point that I want to make is we want the ENGO sector to work with us to fulfill this middle rank. We have communities at the bottom, we have state and policies and agencies, but the ENGO sector needs to fill the vacuum to help communities to build capacity. And I know we have strong ENGOs in this country, but they work primarily on the policy levels. And we need to work more with communities and work with each other. We're on the same boat, we're on the same island, we all have to start building capacity. I'm not going to go through all the detail, these slides will be available. How can we as ENGO already help to create a representative platform, promote it, facilitate the sharing of knowledge, and also share and introduce the latest research. In short, activism, mobilization, voice of the voiceless, capacity building, non-divisive conversations, stewardship. What opportunities are there? Applied action research in collaboration with other stakeholders, applied not only extractive research, but actually working with people to find solutions and learn as we go on. Land stewardship and custodianship, I think it's important. The Burren Bio project, the EIPs, all of these things are land stewardship, custodianship projects where communities and people can work. And we need a national forum for the natural environment, and I think we need to, where we can talk to each other and not have divisive conversations. Funded partnership projects, I think communities, ENGOs needs to get involved in all of these funded projects as partners, more and more. We have a lack of that in this country. Result-based payment projects, land trust or commages for biodiversity. We don't have big land trusts here. We need to have common land that is for biodiversity. We need to work on that. We need to crowdfund. We need to do something about it. What resources do we need? I'm not going to read through it. That's what we want as communities. Equity, equitability, empowering policies. I want policies or legislation or anything to enable communities. They're latent. People are there. They want to get involved. They want to do something. Make it happen for them. That's basically. If I want to go to Dublin, there should be a train that I can take or a road that I can drive. That is enabling. And that's what I'm trying to say with this. We need to align our common purpose visions. We need to look at our language that we use. We can't create new terminologies and language. We all know what nature is, but we try to get new grand words. Mutual respect and trust is what we need. Participatory decision-making, non-decisive conversation and fora. Everywhere debates is about who's against and who's for, talking to each other. The middle ground doesn't get a chance to say that. Strong and active ENGO partnerships. I'm not going to read through this. It's a good summary. In the last conference that was there, this is one of the outcomes in one of the documents afterwards. This will be made available to everybody, I presume, so I'm not going to read through this stuff. You're all well versed in reading. Thank you very much.
As the ladies ask, I'm going to ask, how many of you are farmers? Hands up. Okay. But you're all consumers, right? So as Chris mentioned, it's a community of interest. So the farming community is a massive area for all of us. I'm actually going to start with my take-home message because I really feel that farmers, they're at the coalface of the biodiversity crisis and they're not being supported at all. And really, they are, I suppose, our frontline workers. Those that are currently working with biodiversity, they're our frontline workers. They have nature-based solutions at their fingertips. And they have the ability to have better environments, more fertile soils, and cleaner water for all of us. But they're not being supported. And in my head, they should be the headliners at this conference. But that's just me, because they are working very hard for biodiversity, the ones that are doing it. So anyway, Farming for Nature. So this was set up in 2018. I suppose it was set up to kind of change the narrative around farming. There's a lot out in the public realm about all the negative damage that farming's doing in the environment, but there's very little about the positive stuff, the positive stories. And farmers have very little or few positive role models, and we wanted to see if we could change that and just change the general narrative around farming. So it was set up to enhance the natural health of the countryside through this. Just quick background, it comes under the umbrella of the Burren Bio Trust. I was the manager of that for about 9 years. Burren Bio is Ireland's first landscape charity. It's based in the Burren. It's the educational wing to the results-based Burren programme, which in the farming community. It's revolutionary. It's the first of its kind. And what it does is it remunerates farmers for producing biodiversity. So through certain stocking densities and grazing management systems, farmers are now maintaining and managing, about 400 farmers are now maintaining and managing one of the finest ecological landscapes in Europe, the Burren. But they have managed to do this through lots of advice and technical support, and they are being remunerated for it. And when I was working there, we were looking to see, well, how could we roll this out nationally? What can we do nationally? And I think one area that we need to start with is finding farmers that are already doing good work nationally. So we set up 4 years ago the National Farming for Nature Ambassador Awards as a means of finding these farmers and sharing their stories. And to date, we have about 66 of these. So each year, what we do is we put out to about 200 nominators that work in the heritage or the environment sector, asking them to put through a farmer that they know that's being very environmentally aware, but also is socially inclusive, and most of all, is productive. Because the way we see it, farming alongside nature does not have to be separate to paying your bills, and that every farmer in Ireland should be able to pay their bills and still farm alongside nature. So we've kind of developed this network of farmers that are both productive but also have a great story to share. And so as you can see here, these are, say, the nominees that have come in each year, and year on year it increases. So this year we received 62 nominations of exemplary farmers. And through a process of judging and visiting the farms and interviews and stuff, we then shortlist it down this year, hopefully, to about 20 ambassadors. So these are our judges that go out and visit the farms. They come from a range of different heritage and environmental sectors and farmers themselves. And then what we do is, as a means of engaging the public, people like yourselves as well as farmers, we create small videos from a cross-section of these ambassadors. And these are just short 5-minute videos telling the story of what they're doing on their land, the positive actions that they're taking for nature on their land. But it's also a means of getting the farmers' voices out there, but also getting the public involved, because each year we do a vote where public get to vote for their favourite farmer. And it's just a means of kind of building up an audience and building up an interest as a consumer, as well as for the farmers to make changes, but also for all of us as public to know what's going on farms and that people are doing great stuff and what they're doing. So as I said, it was we set up the network to help kind of reframe the narrative, but really what we've also managed to do is a lot of these farmers would say to us, so there's 66 in the network currently, and we add about 20 each year, and a lot of them will say to us they find a lot of solace knowing that there's farmers doing similar stuff as them elsewhere, because very often these farmers are doing something different to their neighbours. You know, they're maybe not using chemical inputs, they're allowing their hedgerows to grow, and very much, you know, one farmer was only saying to me the other day, do you know, I feel a lot more strength at talking to my neighbours, knowing that there's other farmers across Ireland also doing the same stuff, and there's strength in numbers to do this. And what we feel also is that farmers' voices, I mean, they should be centre stage in the climate and biodiversity crisis. And so getting their voices out there is really, really important to what we're doing. So whether it's a 2-acre horticultural farm in Donegal or a 1,500-acre tillage farm in Kildare, we kind of feel that we're getting to the point where nearly every farmer in Ireland could relate to at least one of these farmers and take one of their practices home. And that's just a farmer saying, you know, that he was working in isolation, and it's good to know. So the other thing that when we set up, we felt, I'm quite a simple reader, I'm not very good at science, but I kind of felt that there's a lot of information out there on how you can improve your farm, but actually just getting it in one place in a condensed, easy to read format, I felt was important. So we've set up a website. Like in the last month, we would have had about 90,000 hits on it, so it's quite a popular website where people go for information. It's divided, some of it's divided by habitat and what you can do, or even by season. A lot of it's been put together by our farmers. The farmers help us very much with what we do. We've also put together a series of booklets that people can print off, best practice guidelines, and this is divided into not only what you can do on your farm, but why it's good agriculturally, ecologically, but also for climate. And what we find with these particular booklets is that a lot of ag science teachers print them out, a lot of green cert colleges, so different, it's getting into more the educational side of things. And even for not just farmers, but for the public, we have these kind of very simple illustrations on them. What does a poor management of a hedgerow look like? What does a moderate one look like? And what does a good one look like? So that we're all kind of aware of just how much biodiversity is connected in a very simple manner to these different kind of habitats and what's the kind of best practice behind it. The other thing that we do is we have kind of month by month what you might see on your farm and actions that you can take on your farm to improve these areas of nature. You know, from everything from soils to wildlife to water quality. I'm always very aware and very conscious that everything we do is about getting the farmer's voice out there and getting, you know, their top tips out there. So we've put together a series on our websites where farmers give their top tips on areas that they're passionate about. So as you can see here, Jim Cronin's got one on compost, and John McHugh has got one there on holistic plant grazing. But we have lots, like everything from attracting bats to your land, or fens, or there's lots of different areas. And it's just, what I think is really important is that farmers are able to kind of say, these are my tried and tested methods of what works, but also what doesn't work. Because, you know, you've also got to, farmers will say that, you know, some things just don't work on my type of land or my farming system. And I think it's good to know that as well. The other thing that we've developed is podcasts. They're very short, simple series of podcasts. They're 15 minutes long, and you know, again, it's just a lovely way of hearing a farmer's voice and what they've done. So say Paul Moore here is talking about how he enticed barn owls to his land and how you can do it as well. Or Tommy Early is talking about how he developed ponds and how he's encouraging other people. But they're just very short, sweet snippets. They get about 1,000 listens a week. So at the moment, they've really increased recently. So, you know, it's kind of getting out there a bit more and more. Sorry, and Nia O'Malley here, just because I mentioned the other two, she's talking about kind of upland grazing, the importance of upland grazing for biodiversity.
The one that really done it.
I did have a short but I think we guys, have we got lots of time? No, well, I'll keep going. Yeah, so 2 minutes, okay. I feel like I'm, okay. So, of course, there's nothing as good as kind of on the ground, face to face, getting to know what works on the ground. So over the next, over this summer, say, we have 35 farm walks organised throughout the country with different farmers. And what's really nice is if any of you know about farming and stuff, like if you have a farming system and a land type, you can be so different to even your farmer beside you. So by going to different farmers across the country and seeing what they've done on their land, you just pick up little snippets. But also it's a really nice kind of knowledge exchange area, because most of the people that go on the farms, everyone's welcome, the public are welcome, but most of them are farmers that go. So there's a really nice exchange on how they've done different things. Every fortnight we have a Q&A online. So by the way, all of this is free. So if anyone has any interest in joining or being part of any of what we do, feel free. But we have an online Q&A every fortnight on a Tuesday evening with one of our farmers. And again, it's just a really nice way. Say if you're in a farm in Kerry, you can't leave it to go to a farm in Donegal for a farm walk, but you can listen to them and have a chat online and discuss kind of what works and what didn't work on their farm. The other gap that we felt was a forum, a safe space. Social media is great, it has a role, but sometimes it's not a very safe space to just discuss, come here, how do I do this? I just really don't know, and I need some help and some feedback. So we have a forum online, like our most recent questions are like, how do I manage docks? Where do I buy Galloway cattle for grazing? You know, so related to farming for nature. Like I said, everything, you know, it's really good to have all the farmers out there doing their work and sharing their stories, but every year we bring them together at the Burren Wintridge School, and so that they can hear from each other but also support each other and kind of have the impetus to keep going for another year. Our annual awards are at this, but also the Burren Wintridge weekend, as part of it we do a cattle drive on the Sunday, and it's a really nice just reminder of the importance of how people have impacted a landscape, but also how landscape has impacted people for positive ways for biodiversity. And coming together to celebrate our farming traditions, I think, is really important, no matter where you are, what you're doing. We've started growing internationally, so there's a Farming for Nature Austria and a Farming for Nature Lithuania, who have started doing awards last year, and I think they'll continue to do it this year. Albania is looking to do one as well. So it's really nice that people have approached us, they like what we do, and they're looking to do the same in their country. Nothing would be worth it, and it wouldn't be worth it unless we're starting to build up our audience, and because we have a massive mindset to change. There's 120,000 farmers in Ireland, and as you can imagine, some people are going down a motorway really fast one way, and we're trying to help people take a left turn if they want to, but also get the public on board, because I really believe if consumers are involved, if the public are on board, then that's when policy will really start to listen, and industry. As we know, industry has a very, very loud voice in the farming community. So we're slowly building up an audience, slowly building up an impact, and it's really nice to get this feedback from people. People are so passionate by what they've managed to do or change on their land that I get regular emails saying thanks for the information we've put up there. There's many ways you can get involved: attend any of our sessions, follow us on social media, join up to our podcast videos, print off anything. Thanks to these chaps for being on board since the beginning. But most of all, thanks to these guys who day in, day out do what they do for nature, for all of us, but also are so inspiring in sharing their stories and getting it out there. And hopefully the ripple effect will continue. So we were asked to answer some questions, and I suppose the main things that I think from this conference should happen is that farmers throughout Ireland are provided with the right incentives to work alongside biodiversity. So more results-based schemes are a necessity. The farmers that want to farm alongside biodiversity are supported, and support others that are thinking about it, coming more into it. That there's a better level of advice and support, both at a state level, and that community initiatives like Farming for Nature and others in this crowd are supported. That there's financial support and encouragement for community-led initiatives like Farming for Nature and others, to make sure farmers' voices, especially farmers that are doing great work for biodiversity, are at the table, and that they're heard through media work, through conferences and stuff, because they've got a very, very valid aspect. Like I say, I feel that they're the frontline workers in all of this. And encourage more private sector and consumers to play a role. I do have a short video afterwards, but I will, if we have time, we will share that afterwards. Thanks very much.
Isn't that fantastic? 1,000 listens a week. Isn't that just fantastic? God, it's one of the most positive things I've heard now in the last 2 days, so I'm delighted. So I'll tell you what we're going to do now. I want to bring in some people online. I want to tell you a little, just to say that the Community Foundation, for those of you who don't know us, we're a philanthropic organisation. We work with families of major and minor means who want to do something. We've been working in social justice for the last 20 years, 22 years, and for the last 10 years in environment and nature. So just to commit that the Community Foundation will continue to do this. So for the next 5 years, the department and ourselves have said that we will work together on community biodiversity action plans, as well as other issues. But the Community Foundation is here for the long term. So we will stand as an ally. So whatever we can do to help you, we are open to it. Okay, that's our bit. So I'd really like to make 5 minutes at the end. So 11:05, we'll have our video of our farmer, because that was just wonderful. And I agree with Brigid. I think they should be front and centre, and maybe what we need is a separate conference. How do you think? Okay, so online, I just want to talk to Paul Leach, is online, and he says, I suggest biodiversity activists and agencies synergise with the 26 town centre first pilots, one in each county, who have now been provided with about 100,000 each to get going. he says, with locally based initiatives to restore our hollowed out towns and villages. Biodiversity can be integral to that. Maybe our towns can be less tidy and more ecological. Great teams in place with heritage arts biodiversity officers and new town regeneration officers being appointed. So that's Paul Leach's comment. Isolde Sheehy says, great to hear from the community groups who have been leading the way with the on-the-ground restoration for such a long time. Imagine what they could do if they were properly resourced. And then we have Robert Fennelly. And Robert wants to introduce himself too because he's an air-grid ecologist. And air-grid is rolling out significant funding of biodiversity community projects on our grid development projects. Scribbling notes here, he says, to ensure we link in and support existing initiatives and promote established guidelines. He said it's uplifting times. And he says, have any communities encountered challenges with the NPWS? Okay, I'll take that in 2 minutes. Or other stakeholders in terms of ensuring biodiversity restoration methods are best practice on community projects. Dervla Keegan, really interesting talk. Farming for Nature, a great project, great resources too, and we were delighted to nominate this year. And Justin Ivory, who I think is an absolute walking genius, just said, brilliant talk, Brigid, thank you. Totally agree with Faith about mapping individual community biodiversity actions like the AIPP actions for pollinators have brought this up with Liam Lysett and MBTC several times over the last 2 years. Also brought it up at one of the plenary sessions yesterday. Let's make it happen. So just to say that our colleagues, I was going to say, what do you call participants, our fellow participants are also taking part in this. So now, hands up, questions. Okay, brilliant. So I'll go first. Where have you got the mic? Have we got a mic? I don't really need one. You don't? Okay, you don't really need one. It's just actually, do you know what the problem is? It's not for here. It's for the people online, so they can hear you. Just this man here. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mike Brennan. I'm working in the House of the Oireachtas. Just thanks to all the panel. That's an amazing series of works. I've got 2 questions, one to Faith and one to Brigid. Faith, it seems like that there's a real bank of kind of almost pre-made solutions out there, and I know communities they have to have bespoke plans, but could you maybe talk a bit more about the kind of ready-to-go kind of list of resources that communities can get into, like independently of the community fund? And then to Brigid, could you talk a bit more about the type of results-based payments that you think would enable acceleration of farming for nature out there, and maybe if you know whether or not anything like them is in the Catch Strategic Plan as it currently stands?
Okay, can I just ask, can you remember that question? Can you remember that question? Because I'd like to just get 1 or 2. If there's 1 or 2 more questions, I'll get them, and then is there anybody else with questions? Yeah, 1, 2, yeah. I'll take 1 more question and then we'll answer, and then I'll take another 2 and then we'll answer.
Hi, thanks very much. I'm Keith Scanlon. I'm in North Wicklow and South Dublin on the rivers. Hi. I'm a community volunteer, and I took a day's annual leave today to be here to represent all the other thousands of community volunteers who couldn't get here because they couldn't do that, and many of you probably in the room as well. So just wanted to say, remember the sacrifices of community volunteers, make sure to include them. Just asking the scientists and the policymakers and the politicians and all the universities, everyone else, please include us on the community, because we live in the biodiversity. It's our personal habitat, and we care. I sent some slides. Connor said he did put, I gave you 5 slides. They're probably online, and you can see the work we're doing bottom up. And people talk about, and this is something you might be able to engage, people talk about engagement as if it is to include the community and the citizens with the politicians and what they're doing. And we say, no, that's not it at all. We're already here. We are the biodiversity. We are the community. These oak trees that we're trying to stop being chopped beside us, they are in the community too. This otter eating this trout because the insects are good, because we've protected the quality of the water and taught the kids how they have to protect it and help us. We're the biodiversity. Please engage with us. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, will we go questions?
So to answer a question about resources, I'm not sure, do you mean resources for funding or for information?
Like a bank of solutions that communities can just proactively go to and say, do you know what, I'm going to do that, that and that, without necessarily engaging in a formal way with, say, community fund or other initiatives, so that they could just drive it themselves.
Yeah, I suppose the thing is, once you start looking, there's a huge amount of resources out there. And it was one of our recommendations on doing the review was to create a portal like what Brigid you've done in Farming for Nature, where it was kind of a go-to shop, because when you know where things are, it's very easy to find out, or it's very easy to frame the question that you can get the answer. So like what the Wetlands Forum have been doing in guidance on, you know, what communities can do for peatlands. So I think pulling all that together, because there's such an amount of information out there, and I think hopefully that's something maybe that can be developed.
Absolutely.
And then in terms of funding, I was amazed that suddenly there was funding from Community Foundation Ireland, there was funding from Leader, there was funding from, there's a lot of funding out there, and sometimes maybe that's all a community needs. So some of the biodiversity plans included that kind of information of where to go. And a lot of ecologists would have also recommended that community groups supported the NGOs, you know, because it's very easy to forget that the NGOs need support as well. And suddenly everybody's just, oh, you know, go and talk to Bat Conservation Ireland about bats. Well, like that takes somebody there to answer that question and to deal with that query, and the same for Birdwatch Ireland. So being mindful of that, I think, is very important, as opposed to just saying, this is a resource, you know. That would be my comment on that.
Yeah, and just to say also, you know, there's websites like pollinators.ie have fantastic community actions if somebody wants to start off, but also tidytowns.ie, the official website. We're just after writing a new guidelines section, and it goes through each of the competition categories, and groups don't have to be a Tidy Towns group as such, but it's got, you know, there's great advice there on how to start off on lots of different projects.
So in terms of the results-based payments, there might be someone better in the crowd to answer this than me. So the one I would know is the Burn programme in County Clare. And so you were asking kind of what it is and how it could be rolled out more.
Yeah, like what results-based payments would you recommend are kind of rolled out nationally to accelerate farming for nature?
Yeah, I see what you mean. So sometimes the thing about results-based payment schemes is it's quite hard to kind of nearly roll it out nationally at this stage, because at the moment there's the Burn programme, and then I think there's about 27, someone might correct me, on results-based payment schemes around Ireland at the moment. You know, like the Bride project, there's various of them, and I think that they do need to be replicated more and more. How that would, I'm not your best person to answer this. I work alongside James Moran and Brendan Dunford. They both work on Farming for Nature on a voluntary level, and they do more the kind of policy side of things. They would be better placed to kind of say how the mechanics are rolling that out nationally. And same for your cat question. I'm really sorry, I wouldn't be your person for that. I have no problem putting you in contact with them now. So if you want to give me your email address afterwards, I can send those exact questions to them, and they're here in the crowd somewhere just in this room. Yeah, sorry about that.
Chris?
I just want to say about resources. There are more resources that you can throw a stick at everywhere. And the problem is that the resources are just doubled, and everybody have new wheels to design all the time. They are all over the place. I think what is needed is guidance for communities how to navigate through all of this stuff. And a good start usually is for a plan, because nobody can go anywhere. If you don't know where you want to go, it's been said yesterday as well, how the hell do you know how to get there? And this is what's important. And I think the plans are very good base starts for communities and for people. We need a plan. We need to know what we want to do, a vision, somewhere to go. And that is what we're trying to do with the Community Wetlands Forum, is to get people to share. The biggest resource is the capital in the communities where people know stuff. and the sharing online, sharing, talking to each other. We share the ideas. Just want to say about the EIPs, change the whole cap system as an EIP.
Yeah.
Because we pay farmers to destroy at the moment. Let's be honest with each other. I can say it. I come from a farming background. I know the land. We all live in the countryside. We need to pay farmers because they are stewards, they are custodians. But just remember, Sustainable Development Goals needs to be integrated in all of this. If you don't have money in your pocket or your livelihood is dependent on it, you won't bother about nature or climate change or anything. If you don't have a roof over your head, you're not secure, you don't have food in your mouth. Let's be honest with each other.
Yeah.
The other thing that we forgot to mention at the end of our talk was just that, you know, at the end of last year, the community groups whose biodiversity action plans have been funded by the Community Foundation and the Department of Housing and Local Government and Heritage, they were actually invited then to put forward, say, 2 or 3 actions from the plan, get some costings on how do we actually do these and get funding to make them happen, as opposed to we now have a plan and we all were very enthused and then it's like, oh, we couldn't get the money to do that, or that was too expensive. So that followed through, that the actions are actually happening and these aren't plans that sit on a shelf is, I think, a very important part of the project.
Absolutely. Sorry, the man down the back with the stripy green jumper, yep. And then come back to this one.
Hi, I'm Patrick Garner. I'm a human geographer at Trinity College. Absolutely love this session. I think what it highlighted so well is just how you're immediately faced when trying to address our current many crises with a problem of narration, and that immediately begs the question of who gets to speak. And I suppose there's just so much hope from all these talks. My work is on afforestation in Ireland, looking at a just transition perspective. And unfortunately, within communities that have been most affected by forestry in Ireland, there are some pretty negative cases, most notably County Leitrim.
Yeah.
There's a lot of communities there that are very unhappy and disenfranchised with how forestry has been done. And I'd just like to know if you guys have any thoughts on how to implement the many brilliant initiatives that you guys are doing in a situation where there is that sort of resentment of how it has been done and the procedural injustices of how it has been advanced over the last while.
Could I, before we ask the panel, or I want other people to speak, could I just ask you, do you have ideas about what could happen in those areas?
Well, I think a lot of the stuff that has been highlighted in this is exactly where it needs to go. I think custodianship is exactly the word, and who, not just who narrates, but who owns the initiatives. And forestry has been heavily privatised in Ireland, and there's a lot of reflections, or a lot of similarities between how forestry is being done in Leitrim with absentee landlordism of previous times gone by. And I think it begs not just the question of having engagement of the communities, but having ownership of the communities, that they have an ultimate say in how it is being done, what trees are being planted, where, how it's going to work with the communities that have to live with these forests. That's kind of, I guess, where my head's at on it, but I'd really love to hear if you guys have any thoughts on it.
Okay, if you can hold on to that question, right, on forestry, could I speak, the woman in the pink at the front? Everybody's going to get a chance to speak, okay? If we have to stay a little later than advertised, but I do think it's important that you get your chance.
Hi there, my name is Roseanne O'Neill. I farm in Kerry. I suppose my question would be for Brigid, but just what I want to say first in relation to farmers and this conference was, when I kind of came up here, I thought there would be a lot more representation from the farming community. I was quite taken aback yesterday by the fact that there was, yes, the Department of Agriculture are here, but for me, they do not represent the farmers on the ground. At the end of the day, they were the ones that were pushing the policies that we're now told are completely wrong and we need to backtrack and all this. But also, I suppose it's just, for me, there's an obvious glaring gap between what we're doing here and the farmers and what they're doing and what they're thinking even, because yesterday the amount of times farmers and agriculture were mentioned, you know, it was throughout nearly every session, you know. And I just thought, we're all here talking about farmers, but farmers are out there and they're not talking about this. You know, I only heard about this conference in May, I think it was quite late in the game. It wasn't promoted out there. So unless that gap is bridged, so to speak, you know, the strategies and everything that's being hammered out, you know, those more acronyms there yesterday than you could shake a stick at, as the fellow says. I got lost in a lot of it, but it's not going to work because we are the majority landholders in the country. You know, I'm a farmer, my parents were farmers, they instilled in me my passion for biodiversity, for wildlife, for nature from a very young age. So they're representative of a generation of farmers that do care and that are doing stuff and that want to do, you know, things. I think it's unfortunate, you know, even looking at social media last night, you know, the hammering that farmers are continuing to get, you know, despite what we are doing and what Brigid showed there. I'm sure that's just a small example, because there are plenty doing more that haven't been, you know, that aren't on, you know, videos and things like this to show people. But look, I suppose to get to the point, my question for Brigid is, have you had any engagement with, let's say, the IFA? What has been the feedback on any of this? You know, we've obviously got the ploughing match coming up in September, which is a huge farm gathering. You know, will there be representation at that? You know, rather than something happening in Dublin, but there's no farmers at. We know there'll be hundreds of thousands of people going to that, thousands of farmers. Are we using those events to target farmers in relation to biodiversity? And on that, I'd say even the language is all wrong.
Yeah. Okay, forest farmers, pass the mic along, because they. Who else wanted to speak? Just pass the mic up, and we'll go down the line.
Hi, how are you? My name is Michelle, and I work in Dublin in local authority. And I suppose I'm coming from an urban point of view. And just a question to Fiona about the tiny towns. I would look after many community groups and trying to encourage them for tiny towns. And I know even today they're out scurrying around, getting ready for judging, and trying to encourage them in the right way. And you know, we've done it for many years. But I think the setup of tiny towns, I know you're saying even the name is even, you know, cringe fest, you know, the name. So, and the whole, I wouldn't blame the communities. They're only going by the point system, and I know biodiversity is coming in, and there is now extra points for the, you know, for leaving the ivy on the wall and so on. But I think the setup of the tiny towns competition itself, I think, you know, doesn't encourage the tiny town, because they're only moving towards their point system in, you know, what they want to get that award. And I think maybe, I know you're saying there is some review on it, but I don't know how far that review is going in order to encourage people to go with more, you know, a wild look and a dirty look and leaving the weeds along the road.
I'll come back to that. Can I just add, Justin, can you hold on till the end? I just want to try and get everybody's voice. The woman behind you, yep.
Hi, just a small question, because I think it's really nice point we're all part of communities, and there's a lot of talk of the fantastic community initiatives that you guys are all presenting here, and ENGOs, and I work for university in research support, so always looking at new funding programs and partners for consortia and that kind of thing. And I was wondering if any of you, or anyone even in the audience, had any comments or suggestions as to how universities can get better involved or can better support, or what the most useful role for sort of university research might be in some of these projects.
Great, thanks a million. Next line, woman, yeah.
McGowan, I work with Clare County Council, the Heritage Officer, and I want to really commend all the speakers. It's very inspirational, and particularly Chris, for your very good ideas for the National Biodiversity Action Plan #4. And as a result of that, I believe that more tidy town groups are now entering the local authority tidy town pollinator awards. We've had, I think, 7 new communities outside of the stalwarts, which is Emerson, Roche, and this time we've had a lot of towns and villages now entering that competition. So I think that's a testimony to the work that's going on. And I'm delighted that you're doing the monitoring and dedicated portal, and it will be important to go on continuing monitoring what you are doing. And I'd like to ask you about your interaction with the local authorities and, as Chris said, how we can build those networks and work more closely together and support each other. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Can we move over this line and then follow on down the back?
Good morning, Brennan is my name. It's just really a comment again to Brigid and what Roseanne was saying there around farmers. My brother-in-law has been farming for 30 plus years and he's thinking of putting 20 plus acres into wood. Last week a Teagasc advisor came out and suggested putting to sitka spruce. Now we're in the middle of like this far into this emergency and disaster that we've created. And we have our state advisors going out. Now, farmers trust their Teagasc advisors. So where is the, that is just a really important point that this is a forestry advisor with Teagasc. He didn't even put an alternative to him now. Because I have a small native woodland, I went down and my sister, they have 4 small children, and she did raise the point with the Teagasc advisor, you're talking about economics, and that advisor was advising on the basis of economics alone. But she said we may not even have, an environment worth talking about in 30 years' time. What's the point of talking solely now on the basis of economics? And the happy outcome is they will probably put that into native woodland. But that needs to be addressed. And also, could we propose a name change for tidy towns to untidy towns?
Program. Again, I want to commend everyone. It's been a fantastic morning. There was just 2 points that were made earlier that I just maybe want to come in on. One was in relation to the urban regeneration, and that's something that we're on the water side of things, so there's great interaction with biodiversity, and there is a lot of work being done on nature-based solutions and working with urban regeneration. And it's a water and biodiversity measure. So that's the first thing. The second thing, in relation to the point on EIPs and what measures could be done, there are measures being proposed under the CAP, which does look at biodiversity and water under the AECN and cooperation projects. So that's hopefully going to be a game changer in terms of linking biodiversity, water and agricultural measures. So they're the 2 points I wanted to make. And the other thing is that I'm hearing a lot of discussion around biodiversity, but for me, it's biodiversity, water and climate. We're all integrated. A lot of measures that you're talking about from the biodiversity perspective also will protect our water quality and vice versa. So I think it's really good, but I'd like to be involved in some of the discussions with the different groups to bring that interaction closer. Thank you.
Well said. Yeah.
Hi there. Marion Keogh is my name. Rockstar Faith Wilson up there is amazing. And with all of this that everybody's talking about, it's fantastic. There's a word that I haven't heard. I've learned more acronyms in the last day. My head was completely bamboozled 3 a.m. this morning, but I did hear the dawn chorus, which was nice. Nobody's talking about urban anything. There's over 1 million people living in this city in Dublin. It's all about the farmers, and it's all about who owns the land. And then we have a farmer from Kerry saying that the farmers aren't being represented. I don't know, whoever's organising this conference, my kids are 22 and 20 and 18. I've spent a lot of money educating them. They're never going to buy any land in this country, not for the next 10 years for sure. So we're not talking to them. You know, we had the media guys on last night, and it was fantastic. Philip Boucher's and EcoEye, and obviously Jane Stout talking a lot about RTE. My kids never watch RTE. You know, come on, like, I think we're missing a serious beat here. And there are a lot of people who've come from other countries, the New Irish, whatever. Like, I'm seeing the tidy towns. Yeah, absolutely, it should be the untidy towns. You know, like another very uncomfortable thing to say, and I'm just going to say it. It's white, it's getting older, it's middle class. My God almighty, that's not what Ireland is, actually. I really think that there is a huge chunk here that is being missed. And what's happening, I'm thinking, is everybody is seeing that it is all about the farmers and what they're not doing, and they're not doing this and they're not doing that. And actually they're all just asking for more money. Like, that's such a lame excuse. That is not the real thing here. This is, if we think that COVID-19 was a crisis, like, no. That's not a crisis, that's a walk in the park. We're in serious shit here, we really are. And I just sometimes, you know, it's very, very scary. When we get that scared, we hunker down, we go, no, can't handle it. And we freeze and we don't do anything, then there's inaction. We need to hear about people like ecologists who have all of the answers, and join a tidy towns or whatever it is, and all the tidy towns, all of that kind of stuff, to do something, and for everybody to feel that this one little thing that they're doing is helping our planet.
Thank you so much.
Deleted coordinator for the Dublin Bay UNESCO Biosphere. I want to commend the work that's been done by the people up front. Fantastic, amazing, and inspiring. And I'm actually want to say that a lot of what I'm hearing at this conference is positive action. If you were at the last conference, there was a lot of what we'd like to do. I'm actually seeing things happening, so that's positive. I want to focus on the positive. Regarding the resources, I mean, there are resources out there, absolutely. And they're maybe easy for some people to find, maybe not so easy for others. There's a biodiversity officers network being set up. There's going to be biodiversity officers in all the local authorities. I think that's going to be a massive resource to help local communities if they're properly resourced, and that's the big thing. I mean, we've biodiversity officers in the 4 Dublin authorities, and there's one other biodiversity officer, I'm not sure what county. Okay, go with St. Okay, maybe something that's not. Okay, so we have these biodiversity officers, but they're not funded well enough, in my opinion. They need to be given more resources to be able to really make a meaningful difference. And I think if this new network is properly funded, you'll really improve the knowledge base. So I just wanted to raise that. There's a lot of positive going on.
Yep.
That's a real avenue to make something really meaningful. Thank you.
Can I ask you to pass that over to the man in green and black there in the... There's loads behind you, just I promise.
Thanks, Tina.
Yeah.
Tina, great chair. This is the best session so far for actually getting people talking, and that's what the main room needs more.
Base idea.
Okay, I echo the sentiments of some of the Brigid, the farmer from Kerry. I farm up north, and it's the same thing. You know, farmers want to do the right thing, want to be encouraged to do the right thing, and they want to build a community and being part of a community for like Farmers for Nature, so that they can feel comfortable in doing the right thing, because it's peer pressure and culture pressure for an awful lot of them that is stopping them doing the right thing that their fathers and their grandfathers and their grandmothers did. On the session itself, I think all this talk is not good enough. The poster says act now. We have heard so much about this draft National Action Biodiversity Plan, or National Biodiversity Action Plan, but we haven't seen much. The Taoiseach said this morning that the forum was to contribute to this plan, but it's hidden from view. There was a clinic this morning before 9 o'clock, but the question is, and has to be answered here and elsewhere, and possibly the rapporteur will help, is how does all this talk get implemented into the action plan to mandate the biodiversity officers that they must be resourced, or the council must resource them to go out and do 10 sessions with the community, and the checklist officers must take on board all the actions from the biodiversity action plan. These things can't be left to notions between volunteers and nature towns, as the new thing will be called. And it has to be mandated in the plan so that the officers are told by their seniors, you must do this. And it's not good enough that we come back in a year's time and hear all the great stories and all the things that could have been, should have been done, that were missed opportunities. So the plan needs to reflect that. And these people who are talking and listening need to see that draft, they need to contribute to that draft, and their hearings need to be reflected in the next draft rather than him.
Got it?
I'm going to jump in here because I think there's an awful lot of people want to do something and people don't know necessarily what to do. And I'm looking to what they've been doing in New Zealand, which is part of the recovery plan from COVID, where there's like a movement to get citizens involved in actions for nature conservation and biodiversity and habitat restoration, be they farmers, fishers, people living in an urban setting. It's actually becoming part of their national policy in response, and I suppose I naively hoped with the European Green Deal, COVID recovery stuff, that we would see a movement like that. And it was discussed yesterday, like, this is a crisis, but there's no feeling of a crisis. There was a reaction to COVID that was, this is a crisis, and everybody reacted. Everybody here is just trundling on, on we go, and another plan's written, and we all try and do what we do, and everybody keeps going. But if people started to demand a response, you have to go and demand a response of your councillors, because all they'll hear is, we have a housing crisis, we have a healthcare crisis, we have a war in Ukraine, God help the people of Ukraine, so we all have to go and be that voice for nature and for biodiversity, and we have to make our public representatives realise that it is a crisis and that they have to start stepping up to the plate and treating it in the same way they're treating other crises, because it's not happening, and we're all talking to ourselves and we all know it's a crisis. But most people worry about, did Man United win the match? So that's what I would encourage people to do. Let's try and galvanise the movement of speaking for nature out of this. Like if that's the action that any of us took from this, that we individually can do, is to keep having those discussions and pushing that. That's something we can all do and feel empowered to do.
Okay, sorry, off you go.
Thanks very much. Angus Kennedy from Nature Northwest. I was involved in the Eco-Carn, which is the Carnduna Biodiversity Action Plan, and following on actually from that exact point, one of the things I think that's been missing perhaps throughout the conference is education. If people don't know, people don't care. Why should they? They're busy with other things. And we don't put enough emphasis on educating. And education in a simplified, or maybe that's the wrong word, but in a way that's easy to understand, in a way that gets rid of we've heard people talking about funky terms like biodiversity and sustainability and the issues there. It was touched on earlier on that the resources are all out there. And I can point out, and as I'm sure many people in this room can point out, 100 different websites with 100 different amazing platforms and stuff. But what we found when we finished the Eco-Carn BAP was, even though we did seminars, we did various walkthroughs and whatnot, and we had, I think, 20 different community groups in it, including the Council of National Parks, plus all the local schools. So we had great representation, but they were still going, now what do we do? Even though they had the plan in their hand. So we've just completed a 4-session course, and by doing that short training course, then a whole bunch of representatives from GA pitches, from all sorts of different places, now they know how to monitor in a basic way for bees, or take part in the country bird survey and that kind of thing. And I think what I would love to see in the National Biodiversity Action Plan, and perhaps CFI would be the people to do it, continued on from the BAPs, is education from that. To be able to fund it, at least, education. I see some green skills representatives here today. There's amazing skill. They know how to do that education, how to push it out, but the funding isn't there. And until we bring people on and enable the type of community groups to do it, nothing will happen. we just have a series of grand plans.
Thanks very much. Next person.
I agree there with Angus about education being so important. I work with Green Schools. I also volunteer with Tidy Towns, and living in Galway, I've just noticed though over the past few years there's been an increase in the use of pesticides by the local community and also by farmers, by everybody. And I'm just wondering, is there going to be legislation for pesticides and the amount people use and how to use it? I see people using it, rain, hail, snow. It's going into our water supplies, it's affecting our nature, poisoning wildlife. And Pollination Plan has been fantastic in encouraging people to grow wildflowers and that. But at the same time, there's still been chemicals being sprayed.
I couldn't agree with you more. Terrible. Next question. Sorry, next comment, question. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Hi, I'm Colette O'Flynn with the National Biodiversity Data Centre. I just want to start by concurring with many people here in what a very inspiring session this is, and congratulations to the panel and many others on all the hard work you've been doing, and good to hear we'll continue to do. Just a couple of comments. One, I suppose the data centres involved is running an EIP programme on protecting farmland pollinators. So it's evidence-based actions, and there'll be a scorecard. So it'll be interesting just to see when that project is finished, this pilot project, what will come of that. And how that may further be taken on board to be rolled out. You know, we know many actions for pollinators that benefit them, benefit nature in the wider sense as well. Also, during your presentation earlier, you showed the Actions for Pollinators portal where people can log their actions, and just mentioned about its purpose beyond that. I and my colleague here, Martina O'Brien, we will shortly be launching an Actions on Invasives portal. It's on the same system, but it's anybody who's taking preventative action, whether it be biosecurity or control or management measures, or even involved or undertaking awareness, can log their actions. And that would be fantastic to have that out there, because we do need to see more coordination of what's happening. There's a lot of work done, but we need to really start documenting it now and understanding better all that's going on. And it will be a phased launch, a phased release of the guidance materials to support it, and who can log actions. But we'd welcome everybody here when the time is right to log their actions on that.
Thanks so much.
Morning everybody, I'm Rob Gandala. I wear many hats, so I'm a EU Life Project Officer on Tashkent. And just for the record, Tashkent doesn't pay farmers. I love farmers, particularly those with ponds, so everybody wants the advice. But the big thing, I do a lot of community, usually in North County Dublin. That's obviously, you can tell by my accent where I'm from. And the issue is we've run into an insurance crisis, just add to the trying fuel, fertilizer, every other crisis you can imagine. It's not just small NGOs, like some of the bigger ones as well have come into this. And is there potential here, like Chris has alluded to, where we can set up some sort of scheme where smaller NGOs can buy into like a national insurance thing. Aviva took over the charities policy apparently, but stopped taking new entrants before we were even told that they were the ones that were taken in. Took on like the Hiscox market. Then they would only work through brokers, which kind of led nearly every tiny town group, small community group into a dead end. And nobody can do anything without insurance, unfortunately. The local authorities can offer 800 events a year for training, upskilling, whatever you want to call it. But if there's no insurance in place for the community groups, none of it's going to happen.
I couldn't agree with you more, and they closed down the repair cafes for the very same reason. There's a piece on insurance that needs to be tackled without 100%. So
COVID's hammered, so my wife and volunteers, small NGO, COVID hammered us for 2 years with no source of income. Now we can't get insurance, so that's year 3 for no source of income. Now I'm personally insured, so I'm a consultant ecologist in one of the other various jobs that I do as well. And I'm attached to be covered. But if we want to do any work with, like, farmers are grants, farmers are all covered by FB or whoever to access the land, so they're laughing. But community groups are definitely the ones that are going to suffer if this insurance is going. Somebody needs to get a hold of it.
I agree with you. Oisin Smith is working on a bill, and we should just go to him and explain all this as well. But I'll talk to you separately about insurance, because it's bigger than one group. It's a whole sectoral response. We need to get the wheel involved in as well. This man over here has been waiting ages. And then just I'll give you the last word.
Thanks very much. Cody Preston is my name. I'm a teacher and a member of the Irish Schools Sustainability Network. So we're just a group of students and teachers that come together from all over Ireland to try and make our schools more sustainable places. And I'm looking to work with some inspirational young people, amazing people. But I suppose the misconception is that all young people are engaged on these issues, and unfortunately they're not. lots of them are unaware of the climate emergency, unaware of biodiversity loss. They're actually unaware of, you know, what real nature is, because they don't see it enough. So what I would say to all the community groups here in the room is, please engage with young people. So get them involved in your tidy towns groups, get them involved in whatever river monitoring you're doing. Reach out to youth groups, reach out to schools, because it gives them huge confidence. So I've seen it myself when they work with community groups, they just get so much confidence from that, and it just gives them, you know, the inspiration to go and talk about it to their peers and their parents, and it's a benefit to the community groups as well, because you guys get the help from them. So anyway, just wanted to add that.
Thanks so much. Look, folks, we're 4 minutes over time, so just take last thing, and then I just want to give a really brief overview of the questions. It'll have to be quick fired, so you're going to have to answer quickly. We just take another 3 minutes, okay? So just yeah.
Thanks very much for coming back to me. Hopefully I can put the presentation into the material that's available anyway, about how our community actually has pulled all the groups, all the stakeholders, everyone together. We've done what Faith and everyone else has said. We've demanded what our councillors must do. We've changed our councillors because they weren't good enough. We brought them all into the public meetings. Number 1 on the agenda was climate. Number 2 on the agenda was biodiversity. Number 3 was everything else after that. We changed our councillors, we changed our TDs, we blacklisted the ones who weren't good enough on climate and biodiversity. We've done all that. We've all stakeholders, youth, everyone. We always have a youth start off the meetings. I'm on the management of lots of different groups, including the tiny towns. And if I could just end on that. Is it possible to change the name? Absolutely, it's possible to change the name. So we, the Dalgety Tidy Towns, have asked 3 years ago, can we change the name? Tidy Towns and in Irish, Abbeyleix, Slachtwara, does not represent what we do anymore. We don't give a damn about the competition. We're about Dalgety, we're about the town, the community, the habitat. So we have asked 3 years ago, please change the name. We want it to be called, in English, Conscious Communities, and in Irish, Balsio or Living Towns. They told us, yes, we will consider that. And if we get the same kind of request from the other tiny towns, we will change the name. So please support that. If you have your own suggestions what the name should be, give that. But here's our suggestion that they're considering. We've got the 5 neighbouring tiny towns to support that as well. You might support it. So conscious community is much better than tiny towns.
Thanks so much.
And Balsio.
Okay. Now, can we? Well, I'm getting all the cut.
Just wait a couple of minutes for the room.
What did you play the video?
So can I? Well, no, because we will need to answer the questions instead of the video. Is that okay, Brigid? We need to answer some of the questions, and I just think, like some of them, like Brigid, who's talking to the IFA? I think that is. Who in the room doesn't want to know that?
Yeah. So
wait, just hold on 1 second. Is that everybody gone?
The IFA and Chagas. What? The IFA and Chagas.
Chagas, yeah.
Chagas are the ones who are pushing.
Is that? Are these still on? Philip.
So I suppose just because it was one of the first questions, Roseanne, that you had asked. We're about 4 years old, and when we started out, we did have meetings with IFA, with Chagas, and sometimes it's like running through wet cement and trying to get through. But what's happened, I have found 3 or 4 years later, is they're contacting us. They're putting forward they're kind of saying, well, what can we do, whatever, and we're kind of like, well, it's all there. Get more people involved, spread the word, but it's slow. But I know we haven't got time on our hands with the biodiversity process, but I kind of feel that the tortoise will win on this one. So we just got to keep trying getting it out there as much as we can do. So,
were they invited to this event? Where did they turn it down? That's what
yeah, I can't speak on behalf of that, but all I can say is that over the next year or two, it is a massive part of my intention to start working on educating the Chagas advisors, working with the farm advisors, and there's a massive amount of work that needs to be done. In terms of farming for nature, I work only 14 hours a week. everyone else is a volunteer. So we're trying to do as much as we can, like all volunteer groups or all groups in general, but we're on it. Leave it with me, and I need you to work on it in Kerry as well.
Okay,
Can you do that for me?
can I just ask, I'm not going to go do the tidy towns, because Justin has answered that if people write in and ask for the name to be changed, that they're open to it. So I'm going to leave the tidy towns because, and I know you asked the question, but you know there is a huge changes going on, both on biodiversity, on the markings and everything like that, and the name change I think will happen because it has to evolve. But I would like to go back to the forest in Leitrim. Would anybody like to talk about that?
I will talk about it.
Okay, Chris.
Doesn't matter whether it's the forest or the pools or that is whatever habitat or whatever it is, whether it's the hospital in your village, it is the community who has to take charge of their community. This should actually be a well-being conference. Well-being economically, biodiversity or environment, and also our mental and physical and health well-being, because it's all integrated. And that's all integrated. You're 100% right. Unfortunately, it's a biodiversity conference. That's what we talk about. But communities need to take charge of their own destiny. And power is in the community. That's the voter. And we're all part of communities in that sense. And that's the key to all of this.
Okay. I'm going to keep the answer short and to the point if you can, because we are late. So, would you like to, Fiona, would you like to answer the question around what can the universities do about, what can they do better to be better involved? We all know that there's a lot of money going into research. We've seen that. So what couldn't they do to be better involved?
I'm someone who came out of the university system myself, but both myself and Chris volunteer at home in Abbeyleix with our local bog project, and there's been terrific collaboration there. And it's a case of reaching out, but it was, I mean, we've had lots of different research projects take place on the bog, but it's I suppose if you know, depending on what type of work is being done, something like the Tidy Towns unit, the head office up in Ballina, you know, if universities are to reach out and get in touch with them, if they have ideas for community-based projects, that's a good place to start, because as I say, they have the contacts for over 900 community groups. With the Community Wetlands Forum, then when it comes to wetlands projects,
Yeah, I would just say ask communities what they want. Because there's a lot of research questions that people come with PhDs and masters and stuff. That's wonderful. But it is extractive sometimes. It just takes the IP and walk away. There needs to be something that is action-based research, where you actually work with communities, ask them what they want out of it, and learn from them as well. Because there is a lot of mutual learning in all of this. Just go to the level of communities. It sounds like you're going down, you're not. You actually learn a hell of a lot.
Okay, just on the Chagas advisor, that's the second one that at plenary that I've been at, our second session, where Chagas advisor, and Kevin, and I can't remember his surname, maybe somebody else in the audience would, yesterday said that for every soil there's the right type of trees, and that there should be, I know, and he said that it wasn't good enough. Do you know that you should have been given, or the person should have been given a different choice. So I just hope that there's somebody here from Chagas. Is there? Is anybody here from Chagas? No, they'd probably be terrified to put up their hands now. So, but I do think that if there's, are you from Chagas?
I'm from Chagas, but I work in the College of Horticulture. I teach biodiversity into the horticulture courses.
Yeah, I just wonder.
I'm an advisor.
But I wonder, is there a way to get this, you know, this conversation back into Chagas? It might be a good thing to say that you're at the conference and it came up a couple of times.
It's in my notes.
Thank you so much. You see, a good
Can I
woman.
say something about
Okay, urban.
Can I just say something about it? Just quick on the whole thing, Chagas and all the semi-state agencies and stuff. They construct. They're just an imaginative construct.
Sorry.
If you want to engage with people like that, you get somebody in that organization that thinks the same as you, and go and find them and talk to them. Because all of what we do is based on people working with people. and you build trust and understanding and mutual common goals that you reach. Once that person is on your side, he will go back to the organization and says, we need to get on board. That's a different approach.
Okay, can I just, I'm going to put a few of these together. Okay, the urban versus farmers and who's centre stage or not. The thing about it is, it's all of us. It's all of us. Every single one, every child, every one of us. So I think sometimes, especially around the farmers, we know that they're a huge lever because of the land base. But on the urban side, we definitely have had conversations, and with town centres first, I agree with Paul Leach. We need to be talking about what are we doing in town centres first that is around biodiversity. I think there was conversations yesterday, and I know in the pollinator plan, there's streetscapes, there's advice around streetscapes, and I think that we should just think about it differently, all of us together. On the biodiversity officer funding, because you said it and because we've recorded it, it'll go in as one of the submissions, and I know that you also asked about how do we get this mandated into the plan, and again, this is being recorded, and we have a rapporteur as well who's going to talk. Yeah.
Sorry, just on that point, I just think that there should be biodiversity teams.
Yeah.
In each council.
Yeah.
There isn't
Not
enough.
just one.
Yeah.
There isn't enough for one person trying to do all that work in a county. It's just not enough.
Okay, so just in case this wasn't recorded because you hadn't got the mic, it has been recommended that we have biodiversity teams in our local county councils, not just a biodiversity officer. So if that could be recorded would you like the mic?
No, I just said, could you do the same for heritage officers?
And the same for heritage officers, heritage teams as well. Okay. All right, can I just come back to the education and funding for green schools? Does anybody want to take that?
I think as communities we need to reach out to schools within our community more, because I think there are things done by so-called grown-up adults where they're not engaging with young people, and I think that's a gap. And I think there's amazing stuff happening in schools. Like, I don't have children, but I'm kind of jealous when I hear what other people's kids are getting to do now, which is brilliant. And I think that's one thing. And just on that engagement within our community, we also need to remember to engage with the arts and with creative people. And it was lovely, for example, to see, I think her name is Hazel, who was cartoon drawing and capturing yesterday on that big sheet. And we need to link in all those people, musicians, artists, people who are theatrical, because everybody needs a voice, and the voice needs to be not just people with science and quite often doom and gloom. We need people's responses to that, because you attract people in different ways. So I think linking in wider within our communities and reaching out to people who wouldn't necessarily think they have anything that they could contribute to the biodiversity crisis or the climate change crisis, they can.
Brilliant. Last thing was the pesticides, herbicide use. I do not know how we're still talking about this. They're banning it in Europe, and it's like we're waiting on Europe to do this. I've written personally to Glanbia to say, how can you sell Roundup anymore? Like, given everything that's out there. We have to tell the shops that we see it sold in, like you go into Woody's, anywhere, any shop you go into, and there it is. I go up all the time and I say, how can you sell that? It has to be consumer driven at this end, because it's taken Europe a while to get the pesticides bill enacted. So just make it felt that this can't be right. And I know, Anne, I know you're going to say that you can't have it excluded, or I think I'm assuming. But all right, that's not your case at all. Okay, forget it. I know that we do need herbicides for certain things. I do know that. All right, that was the last question, except Anne, one. What is it you want to say?
Yeah, sorry, just to say that there are options other than pesticide.
Yeah.
I know from personal experience working in O'Leary, that we don't use pesticides in control of weeds. Now, it does get some people unhappy about feeding
Yeah.
It's an issue. But some examples are on the online pollinator plan website.
Yeah.
Like not using pesticides.
It's happening.
Go to the website.
And Anne's one of the best. Like if you go, when you go through Dunleary Rats down, I swear to God, you just know it. Okay, folks, a huge round of applause for our speakers.